Daehyun stared at his bank account and felt his stomach drop. The numbers were not good. They had not been good for 3 months now. And his landlord was starting to send angry messages. He needed a roommate. And he needed one fast. The apartment was small. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that was really just a corner with a stove, and a living room where you could touch both walls if you stretched your arms wide. But it was home. It was close to Seoul Galactic University, where he studied interstellar communications, and it was cheap. Or at least, it was cheap when you split the rent with someone else. The problem was finding that someone else. Over the past 2 weeks, Daehyun had interviewed 7 potential roommates. The first one wanted to turn the living room into a crystal healing garden. The second one owned 17 cats and refused to negotiate on the number. The third one asked if it was okay to practice screaming at 3 in the morning, because he was in a metal band. The fourth one just stared at him without blinking for the entire interview, which lasted 45 uncomfortable minutes. Daehyun was starting to lose hope. It was now the year 2187, and humanity had been part of the Galactic Union for 30 years. Aliens existed. Everyone knew this, but most aliens thought humans were strange, emotional creatures who cried at movies and hugged each other for no reason. They rarely visited Earth, and when they did, they stayed in special diplomatic zones far from regular people like Daehyun. He had never met an alien in person. He studied their languages, their cultures, their communication patterns, but they were always just words on a screen, voices in recordings, images in textbooks. Not real. Not here. So when he received a roommate application from someone named Nari, he did not think twice. The profile was perfect. Non-smoker. Quiet. Pays rent on time. Currently enrolled at the university. No mention of cats, crystals, or screaming. Daehyun accepted immediately. Move-in day arrived on a cold Tuesday morning. Daehyun had cleaned the apartment twice, which was twice more than usual. He had bought fresh coffee and even put out a small plant on the kitchen counter to make the place look more welcoming. He wanted to make a good impression on his new roommate. The doorbell rang at exactly 9 o'clock. Not 8:59. Not 9:01. Exactly 9. Daehyun opened the door with a friendly smile already prepared on his face. The smile froze. Standing in the hallway was a young woman about his height. She had pale skin that seemed to shift between blue and silver depending on how the light hit it. Her eyes were large and dark, with no visible pupils, like looking into deep space. Her hair was silver and moved slightly even though there was no wind, as if it had a mind of its own. She was wearing an oversized human hoodie and carrying a single metallic case. She was not human. She was Valesian. Daehyun recognized the species from his textbooks. Valesians were known for their logic, their advanced technology, and their complete confusion about human emotions. They did not understand why humans laughed or cried or fell in love. To them, these things were inefficient biological malfunctions. Nari tilted her head to one side. It was a gesture that looked rehearsed, like she had practiced it in front of a mirror. "You are disappointed?" she asked. Her voice was soft and slightly musical. The housing form did not request species designation. I assumed this information was not relevant. Daehyun realized his mouth was hanging open. He closed it quickly. Surprise is an emotional response to unexpected information, Nari said, nodding slowly. I understand. May I enter? My case is becoming heavy. Daehyun stepped aside and watched as his new alien roommate walked into his apartment. She moved carefully, looking at everything with intense curiosity. The old couch, the small television, the plant on the kitchen counter. She studied each item like it was an artifact in a museum. This is acceptable, she announced finally. Where is my room? Daehyun showed her to the smaller bedroom. It was empty, except for a bed, a desk, and a closet. Nari placed her case on the floor and stood in the middle of the room, turning slowly in a circle. I will require additional furniture, she said. A shelf for my research materials. A lamp with adjustable brightness. And possibly a chair. Do humans sit on chairs? Usually, yes, Dae-hyun said, trying not to laugh. Good, I will obtain a chair. She pulled out a small notebook from her hoodie pocket. It was old-fashioned, made of actual paper. She wrote something down with a tiny pen. Chair acquired through human commercial transaction. Dae-hyun watched her write. You take notes? I am a researcher. Nari said simply. I take notes on everything. They spent the next hour establishing ground rules. Separate rooms. Shared kitchen and bathroom. Quiet hours after 10 at night. No guests without advance notice. Nari agreed to everything immediately, writing each rule in her notebook with careful precision. By the time they finished, Dae-hyun was exhausted. Having a conversation with Nari was like being interviewed for a very strange job. She asked questions about everything. Why was the bathroom door closed when no one was inside? Why did humans hang pictures of other humans on their walls? What was the purpose of the decorative plant if it produced no food? That evening, after they had both unpacked, Dae-hyun found Nari in the kitchen. She was standing in front of the coffee maker, staring at it like it was a puzzle she could not solve. Is this machine dangerous? She asked without turning around. Dae-hyun walked over and stood beside her. It makes coffee. It's a hot drink. Humans like it. I know what coffee is, Nari said. I have read about it. But I do not understand the process. The water goes in here. Yes? And the beans. Where do the beans go? Dae-hyun showed her. He explained the filter, the water tank, the heating element. When the coffee started dripping into the pot, she leaned closer to observe. And then she pulled out her notebook again. Do all humans require this thermal beam liquid to initiate daily function? She asked, pen ready. Dae-hyun laughed. It came out before he could stop it. It's not a requirement. It's more like a habit. A comfort thing. Nari wrote that down too. Comfort through unnecessary ritual. Interesting. She poured herself a cup of coffee and took a small sip. Her face remained completely neutral, but her silver hair moved slightly, rippling like water. This is acceptable, she said finally. I will add it to my morning routine. For research purposes. Dae-hyun poured his own cup and leaned against the counter. His alien roommate stood beside him, holding her coffee cup with both hands like she had seen humans do in movies. She was strange. She was confusing. She asked too many questions, but she was quiet. She paid rent on time. And she did not own 17 cats. Maybe this would work out after all. 3 weeks passed, and Dae-hyun began to notice something strange about his roommate. Nari was not just living in his apartment. She was studying it. Studying him. Every morning, she sat at the kitchen table with her coffee and her notebook, watching him move around the small space. When he made breakfast, she wrote something down. When he checked his phone, she tilted her head and wrote something else. When he said good morning without really thinking about it, she paused, considered the words, and then wrote an entire paragraph. At first, Dae-hyun thought he was imagining things. Maybe she was just keeping a journal. Maybe she was working on homework. But then he started catching glimpses of her notes. Words like subject displays habitual greeting behavior, and unclear purpose of asking about sleep quality, and further observation required. He was being observed, like an animal in a zoo. One evening, Dae-hyun came home from the university library to find Nari sitting on the couch, completely still. She was staring at the television with an intensity that scared him a little. On the screen, a Korean drama was playing. A man and a woman stood in the rain, crying and confessing their love for each other. The music swelled. The camera zoomed in on their faces. Nari pressed pause. She wrote in her notebook for a full minute. Then she pressed play. The man pulled the woman into a hug. Nari pressed pause again. More writing. What are you doing? Dae-hyun asked, dropping his bag by the door. Research, Nari said without looking away from the screen. Human romantic behavior is extremely confusing. Why are they standing in the rain? Rain is unpleasant. They could go inside. There is a building right there. It's symbolic, Dae-hyun said, sitting down on the other end of the couch. The rain represents their emotions. How they can't control their feelings. Nari looked at him. Her dark eyes showed no expression, but her hair moved slightly, which Dae-hyun had learned meant she was thinking hard. So they choose to be uncomfortable because it matches their emotional state? Kind of, yeah. She wrote that down. Humans seek physical discomfort to express internal feelings. Noted. Noted. Sent. One of this comfort. Dae-hyun was about to respond when his phone buzzed. A message from Minji, his childhood friend. She was coming over for dinner tonight. He had completely forgotten. 30 minutes later, Minji burst through the door like a small hurricane. She was loud, warm, and always smiling. She had been Dae-hyun's friend since they were both 5 years old, and she treated his apartment like her second home. I brought fried chicken, she announced, holding up 2 bags. Then she saw Nari standing in the kitchen doorway and stopped. Oh wow. You're an alien. An actual alien. Nari blinked. Yes, I am Valesian. Is this a problem? No, of course not. Minji practically bounced across the room. I'm Minji. I've never met an alien before. This is so cool. Your skin is beautiful, by the way. Does it always do that shimmery thing, or is that just the light? It is bioluminescence, Nari said slowly. It increases when I experience strong reactions. Fascinating. Minji grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the table. Come on, let's eat. I want to know everything about you. Where are you from? What's your planet like? Do you have fried chicken on your world? Dae-hyun watched as Minji and Nari sat across from each other at the small table. He brought plates and drinks while Minji talked non-stop, asking questions and barely waiting for answers. Nari seemed overwhelmed but also curious. She kept glancing at Dae-hyun, then at Minji, then back again. During dinner, Minji did what Minji always did. She laughed at her own jokes. She touched Dae-hyun's arm when she was making a point. She stole food from his plate and put extra pieces on his when she thought he wasn't looking. She talked about work, about her annoying neighbor, about the new coffee shop that opened near her office. Nari ate slowly and said very little. But Dae-hyun noticed she was watching them closely. Very closely. After Minji left, promising to come back soon, Nari finally spoke. You and Minji share food, she said. Dae-hyun, who was cleaning up the plates, looked up. What? You take food from each other's plates. This is unusual. Food theft is typically discouraged in most species. It's not theft. We're friends. Friends share things. Nari pulled out her notebook. Friends share food. Noted. She paused, then continued. She touched you 43 times during the meal. Dae-hyun felt his face grow warm. You counted? I always count. Physical contact is significant data. Nari looked at him with genuine confusion. You did not initiate physical contact with her. Why? Is there a problem with your friendship? No, there's no problem. I'm not as touchy as she is. People are different. Interesting. More writing. And when she laughed, you also laughed. But her joke about her supervisor was not funny. I analyzed it. There was no comedic structure. Why did you laugh? Dae-hyun sighed and sat down across from her. Because laughing with someone isn't always about the joke being funny. Sometimes it's about connection. Showing them you're happy to be with them. Nari stared at him for a long moment. Her silver hair rippled gently. So laughter can be a social bonding mechanism, rather than a response to humor. Sometimes, yeah, she wrote for almost a full minute. When she looked up again, There was something different in her expression. Not quite emotion, but maybe the beginning of one. "I am writing my thesis," she said quietly, "about human emotional architecture and pair bonding. On Valencia, we do not have this." She gestured vaguely at the air between them. "We do not have friendships or romantic relationships as you understand them. We have partnerships arranged by algorithms, compatibility scores, resource sharing agreements." "That sounds efficient," Daehyun offered. "It is. But it is also—" Nari paused, searching for the right word. "Incomplete. I came to Earth because my people consider humans the most successful species in the galaxy, despite your apparent weaknesses. You are emotional. You are irrational. You form attachments that cause you pain, and yet you thrive. You create art and music and stories. You build families and communities. You do things that make no logical sense, and somehow, it works." Daehyun was quiet for a moment. He had never thought about it that way before. To him, emotions were just normal. They were part of being human. He had never considered that another species might look at humans and see something special. "So I'm your research subject," he said finally. Nari had the decency to look slightly embarrassed. Her skin flickered with a faint blue glow. "I prefer the term primary observation target. But yes, you are convenient. You live here. You are easy to observe. And you are surprisingly tolerant of my questions." Daehyun laughed, and this time, it was a real laugh, not a social bonding one. "I guess I am. But maybe you could at least tell me when you're taking notes about me. It's a little weird to be watched without knowing." Nari considered this. "That is fair. I will inform you when I am observing." She paused. "I am observing you now. Thanks for the warning." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Outside, the city lights of Seoul flickered through the window. Nari picked up her coffee cup, now cold, and took a sip anyway. "This thermal bean liquid has become acceptable to me," she said. Daehyun smiled. "That's called an acquired taste." "Acquired taste," Nari repeated, writing it down. "Learning to enjoy something through repeated exposure." "Yes. I think I understand." She looked at him then, and for just a second, her dark eyes seemed less like empty space and more like something warmer, something almost human. Then she went back to her notebook, and the moment passed. But Daehyun couldn't stop thinking about it. Maybe being a research subject wouldn't be so bad after all. 1 month after Nari moved in, she made an announcement at breakfast. "I need to conduct field research," she said, looking up from her coffee. "My thesis requires direct observation of human social behavior in natural settings. I cannot complete my work by only watching you in this apartment." Daehyun lowered his toast. "What kind of field research?" I need to observe human social outings, dating rituals, friendship gatherings, public interactions." Nari paused, her hair rippling nervously. "I was hoping you would accompany me, as a guide, and also as a control subject, for comparison purposes." Daehyun wanted to say no. He really did. But Nari was looking at him with those deep, dark eyes, and there was something almost hopeful in her expression. She had been on Earth for weeks now, but she had barely left the apartment. She went to her classes, came straight home, and spent her evenings watching dramas and taking notes. She was lonely, Daehyun realized. Even if she didn't know the word for it. "Fine," he said. "I'll take you out, for research purposes." Nari's skin flickered with a soft blue glow. Their first outing was to a coffee shop near the university. Daehyun chose it because it was always full of students, couples, and friends meeting for conversations. Good observation material, he figured. They sat at a corner table with a clear view of the entire room. Nari had her notebook out within seconds, her pen moving rapidly across the page. "Those two," she said, pointing at a couple by the window. "They are sitting very close together. Unnecessary proximity. What is the purpose? They're on a date." Dae-hyun explained quietly. "They want to be close because they like each other, but they could communicate effectively from a greater distance. Their current position is inefficient for both personal space and temperature regulation. Romance isn't about efficiency." Nari considered this. "Then what is it about?" Dae-hyun thought for a moment. "Feeling. Connection. Wanting to be near someone. Just because it feels good. Feeling good as a primary motivation, rather than practical benefit." Nari murmured, writing it down. "Interesting. Illogical. But interesting." She observed the couple for another 10 minutes, noting their eye contact duration, their hand touches, their shared laughter. When the woman reached over to wipe a bit of foam from the man's lip, Nari nearly dropped her pen. "Physical grooming behavior," she whispered excitedly. "This is typically seen only in deeply bonded pairs. Are they mates? Are they mates? Maybe. Or maybe they're just really comfortable with each other." Nari looked at him with genuine confusion. "How do humans tell the difference?" Dae-hyun laughed. "Honestly, sometimes we can't." Their next outing was to a movie theater. Dae-hyun chose a romantic comedy because he thought Nari would appreciate the emotional content for her research. He was wrong. Nari spent the entire movie leaning forward in her seat, her notebook balanced on her knee, her pen scratching furiously in the darkness. "Why is she running through the airport?" Nari whispered, during the climactic scene. "The airplane has not departed. She could walk at a normal pace. She's emotional. She doesn't want to wait. But the outcome would be the same whether she runs or walks. It's not about the outcome. It's about showing how much she cares." Nari was silent for a moment. Then she wrote, "Physical exertion as emotional display. Love makes humans run." When the couple on screen finally kissed, Nari observed the audience instead of the movie. She noted how couples leaned into each other, how some people held hands during the tender moments, how friends whispered and smiled at the screen. "Fear and romance create bonding opportunities," she said afterward, as they walked out of the theater. "Humans seek shared emotional experiences to strengthen connections, even artificial ones, created by fiction." "You figured that out from one movie?" "I figured it out from watching you," Nari said simply. "You smiled when the characters smiled. You relaxed when they resolved their conflict. You experienced their emotions with them, even though they are not real. This is strange, but also remarkable." Dae-hyun didn't know what to say to that. Their third outing was to a night market. Dae-hyun had been hesitant about this one. Night markets were loud, crowded, and overwhelming. He wasn't sure how Nari would handle the chaos, but from the moment they stepped into the market, Nari transformed. Her eyes went wide. Her skin shimmered with colors Dae-hyun had never seen before, blues and silvers, and soft purples rippling across her face. Her hair moved constantly, reaching toward the lights and the smells and the sounds. "What is that?" she asked, pointing at a food stall. "Tteokbokki, spicy rice cakes. I want to try it." They tried tteokbokki, and hotdog, and fish cakes, and fried chicken on a stick. Nari ate everything with intense concentration, analyzing each flavor like a scientist conducting experiments. "This is unnecessarily spicy," she said about the tteokbokki. But she finished the entire serving anyway. They walked through the crowded streets, weaving between families and couples and groups of friends. Street musicians played on corners. Vendors shouted about their products. Children ran past with glowing toys. It was chaos. It was wonderful. And Nari was smiling. Dae-hyun almost missed it. Her face was usually so neutral, so controlled. But here, surrounded by lights and noise and life, something had changed. The corners of her lips had turned upward. Not much, just a little, but enough. "You're smiling," he said, Nari's smile disappeared immediately. Her skin flushed blue with embarrassment. I was not. I was experiencing a facial muscle response to sensory overload. That's called happiness, Nari. She was quiet for a moment. Then, very softly, she said, "Is it?" They stopped at a stall selling small trinkets and phone charms. Nari examined each item carefully, asking about materials and purposes and manufacturing processes. Then she stopped at a pair of matching phone charms, two small cartoon cats, one blue and one gray, connected by a short string. These are meant for pairs, the vendor explained. Friends, couples, family members. You each carry one half. Nari looked at the charms for a long time. Then she bought them. Outside the stall, she handed one of the cats to Dae-hyun, the blue one. "This is for you," she said quickly. It is a human action. Gift-giving without practical purpose. I wanted to experience it. Dae-hyun looked at the small cat in his hand. It was cheap and a little ugly and completely useless. He loved it. "Thank you," he said. This is really nice, Nari." Her skin glowed softly in the lantern light. "You are welcome." I believe that is the correct response. They walked home together through the quiet streets, the noise of the market fading behind them. Nari was quiet for most of the walk, but it was a comfortable silence, not an awkward one. Finally, as they reached their building, she spoke. "I understand now," she said slowly. "Why humans choose this. The inefficiency, the mess, the emotional risk." She looked at him, her dark eyes reflecting the streetlights. "It feels better than being alone, even when it is hard." Dae-hyun nodded. "Yeah, that's pretty much it. My thesis will need significant revision," Nari said. "All my previous hypotheses were wrong. Humans are not weak because of their emotions. They are." She paused, searching for the word. "They are brave. To feel so much and still continue. That is bravery." They stood outside their building for a moment longer, neither wanting to go inside. "Thank you," Nari said finally. "For today. For all of it. Anytime," Dae-hyun said. And he meant it. They went inside, made coffee, and sat on the couch together. Nari pulled out her notebook but didn't open it. Instead, she just held it in her lap and looked at the ceiling. "I think I am starting to understand," she said quietly. Dae-hyun didn't ask what she meant. He just smiled and drank his coffee. Some things didn't need words. The knock on the door came at exactly 8 in the morning on a Thursday. Dae-hyun was still half asleep, shuffling toward the coffee maker, when the sound made him jump. He wasn't expecting anyone. Minji always called first. Delivery people left packages outside. Nari emerged from her room, already fully dressed. Her face was pale. Even for her silver hair hung completely still, which Dae-hyun had learned meant she was trying very hard to control her emotions. "I will answer it," she said quietly. She opened the door to reveal a tall male Valesian. He was older than Nari, with sharper features and skin that shimmered a cold steel gray instead of her soft blue and silver. His dark eyes swept across the apartment with obvious disapproval. "Nari," he said, "your living conditions are more primitive than expected. Professor Taemin." Nari replied, her voice flat. "I was not expecting your visit, clearly." He stepped inside without being invited, his long coat brushing against the door frame. "I am here to review your research progress. The committee is concerned that your extended stay on Earth has affected your objectivity." Dae-hyun stood frozen by the kitchen counter, unsure if he should introduce himself or disappear. Taemin solved the problem by looking directly at him. "This is the human subject?" Taemin asked. "Subject 0 to 1? My name is Dae-hyun," Dae-hyun said, feeling a flash of annoyance. "Not subject 0 to 1. Taemin's expression didn't change. "Interesting. It responds with emotional assertion of identity. Did you document this behavior?" "Nari?" I documented all relevant behaviors, Nari said stiffly. My research is thorough. We shall see. For the next 2 hours, Taemin reviewed Nari's work. He read through her notebooks, examined her data files, watched recordings of her observations. Dae-hyun sat on the couch, pretending to read but actually watching the interaction between the two Valesians. Nari was different with Taemin. Smaller, somehow. She stood with her hands clasped behind her back, her head slightly bowed, her voice quiet and formal. All the warmth and curiosity that Dae-hyun had grown used to seeing in her was gone, replaced by something cold and careful. Finally, Taemin set down the last notebook and spoke. Your data is extensive, he said, but contaminated. You have allowed emotional projection to influence your conclusions. These observations are no longer scientifically valid. GPS. My observations are accurate, Nari said, a hint of defiance in her voice. I have documented human behavior exactly as I witnessed it. You have documented human behavior through a lens of personal involvement. You share meals with your subject. You participate in recreational activities. You have formed what humans call a friendship. Taemin said the word like it was a disease. This is unacceptable methodology. Nari's skin flickered with a faint blue glow. Personal involvement has provided insights that distant observation could never achieve. Humans do not behave naturally when they know they are being watched from afar. By participating in their social structures, I have gained access to genuine emotional data. You have lost your objectivity, Taemin countered. The committee suggests you return to Valesia to complete your thesis with proper scientific distance. The words hit Dae-hyun like a punch to the chest. Return to Valesia. Leave Earth. Leave. He hadn't realized how much he didn't want that until this moment. Nari was silent for a long moment. Her hair moved slowly, rippling like waves on a still pond. Finally, she spoke. I will consider the committee's suggestion. Taemin nodded, apparently satisfied. Good. Emotional contamination is a serious concern. When studying primitive species, humans may be fascinating, but they are ultimately limited by their biological attachments. Do not forget that. 10. He left without saying goodbye to Dae-hyun, without acknowledging him as anything more than a research subject. The door closed behind him with a soft click. The apartment was very quiet. Nari. Dae-hyun started. I need to think, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She walked to her room and closed the door behind her. Dae-hyun stood alone in the kitchen, his coffee cold and forgotten on the counter. That night, Nari didn't come out for dinner. Dae-hyun made japchae, her favorite, and left a plate outside her door. An hour later, the plate was still there, untouched. He tried to focus on his studies, but the words on his screen kept blurring together. His mind kept returning to the same question. What would he do if she left? 3 months ago, he had been desperate for a roommate who paid rent on time and didn't own cats. Now, the thought of coming home to an empty apartment felt unbearable. When had that changed? When had Nari become more than a strange, question-asking alien who lived in the other room? Dae-hyun thought about the coffee maker lessons, the drama discussions, the night market, and the little cat charm that was now permanently attached to his phone. He thought about how Nari said, "Good morning" now instead of greetings. How she laughed at his jokes even when they weren't funny, because she had learned that laughter was about connection, not comedy. He thought about the way her skin glowed when she was happy, the way her hair moved when she was thinking, the way she looked at him sometimes, like he was the most interesting thing in the universe. He loved her. The realization hit him like cold water. He loved her, not as a roommate, not as a research subject, as something more. But what did that matter? She was leaving. She was going back to a world where love didn't exist, where relationships were algorithms and connections were efficiency scores. He was just data to her. Interesting data, maybe, but still data. The next morning, Minji came over. She took one look at Dae-hyun's face and demanded to know what happened. He told her everything, including the parts he hadn't admitted to himself until last night. Minji listened without interrupting. When he finished, she shook her head slowly. "You're an idiot," she said. "Thanks. Very helpful. No, listen. You're an idiot because you think you're just data to her." Minji leaned forward, her eyes serious. "Dae-hyun, I've seen the way she looks at you. That's not how you look at a research subject. That's not how you look at data. That's how you look at someone who matters. She's an alien. She doesn't even understand emotions. How could she?" "She's learning," Minji interrupted. "That's what you told me, right? She's learning about feelings by watching humans. By watching you. And maybe she doesn't understand everything yet, but that doesn't mean she doesn't feel it." Dae-hyun didn't know what to say. Later that afternoon, he heard Nari's door open. She walked into the living room slowly. Her notebook clutched against her chest like a shield. Her skin was pale, her hair still. "I have been reviewing my research," she said quietly. "All of it. Every observation. Every note. Every conclusion." Dae-hyun waited. "Professor Taemin is correct," Nari continued. "My research is contaminated. I allowed personal feelings to influence my scientific method. I formed attachments that a researcher should not form. By every objective measure, I have failed. Nari. But..." She looked up at him, and for the first time, he saw something like defiance in her eyes. "I do not think I have failed at everything. I do not think I have failed at everything. I came here to understand why humans choose emotion over logic, why they form painful attachments, why they continue to love even when it hurts." She paused, her voice trembling slightly. "I think I understand now, because I am experiencing it myself." Dae-hyun's heart stopped. "I do not want to return to Valencia," Nari said. "Not because of my research. Because of you. Because when I think about leaving, I feel. And when I think about staying, I feel. Something else. Something warm. I do not have a word for it in my language." "Happiness," Dae-hyun said softly. "The word is happiness." Nari's eyes met his. "Is that what this is?" "Yeah," he said. "I think it is." They stood there in the quiet apartment, the afternoon light streaming through the windows. Neither of them moved. Neither of them knew what came next. But for the first time in weeks, Dae-hyun felt hope. The Lantern Festival came at the perfect time. Every autumn, the city transformed. Paper lanterns lined every street. Families and couples gathered along the river to release floating lanterns into the water and watch them drift away like glowing dreams. It was romantic, magical, and completely illogical. In other words, it was perfect for Nari's final research. "This will be my last field observation," she announced at breakfast. "After this, I will finalize my thesis." She paused, her coffee cup held carefully in both hands. "I was hoping you would accompany me." "One more time," Dae-hyun agreed immediately. He didn't ask about her thesis. He didn't ask about Valencia. He just said, yes. They spent the morning preparing. Nari wanted to wear a traditional hanbok because she had read that couples often wore them to festivals. Dae-hyun found a rental shop near the market and helped her choose one in pale blue silk that made her opalescent skin shimmer like moonlight on water. When she stepped out of the changing room, Dae-hyun forgot how to breathe. "Is something wrong?" Nari asked, noticing his expression. "Do humans not wear these correctly?" "I followed the instructions precisely." "No," Dae-hyun managed. "No, you look perfect. Really perfect." Her skin glowed faintly blue with embarrassment. "Thank you. You also appear acceptable in your traditional garment." He laughed. That was as close to a compliment as Nari got. The festival was crowded. Families with children ran through the streets carrying glowing toys. Couples walked arm in arm, stopping to admire the decorations. Friends gathered in groups, laughing and sharing street food. The whole city seemed alive with light and joy. Nari took notes at first. She observed the children, the couples, the street performers. She wrote about the paper lanterns and the food stalls and the way people smiled at strangers. But slowly, gradually, her notebook disappeared into her bag. They played festival games at a booth near the main square. The goal was to throw balls at stacked bottles and knock them down. Dae-hyun missed every single throw. Nari watched his technique, calculated the angles, and proceeded to knock down every bottle in 3 perfect throws. Your trajectory was suboptimal, she explained while the booth operator stared in shock. You were aiming too high. She won a stuffed animal, a round white cat with a pink nose. She presented it to Dae-hyun with formal seriousness. This is a gift, she said, for research purposes. I am observing whether gift-giving creates emotional bonding. Dae-hyun hugged the stuffed cat to his chest. Consider me emotionally bonded. They ate tteokbokki from a street vendor. Nari still found it too spicy, but she ate the entire serving without complaint. They shared hotteok, filled with sweet honey, and nuts. They drank warm cinnamon tea from paper cups and watched the crowds flow past like rivers of light. Eventually, they found their way to the main river. Hundreds of floating lanterns already dotted the water, glowing gold and orange and red. People lined the banks, releasing their own lanterns. Dae-hyun bought 2 lanterns from a vendor. He handed one to Nari. You light it, make a wish, and release it onto the water, he explained. The lantern carries your wish away. Nari examined the paper lantern carefully. This is illogical. A burning paper structure cannot fulfill wishes. There is no causal mechanism. It's not about logic. It's about hope. About believing in something even when you can't explain it. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Like love? Dae-hyun's heart pounded. Yeah, exactly like love. They lit their lanterns. The flames caught, warm and soft, illuminating their faces in the darkness. Dae-hyun watched Nari as she stared at the fire. Her silver hair moved gently, reaching toward the warmth. Her dark eyes reflected the dancing light. What do I wish for? She asked softly. Whatever you want most. She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, there was something different in her expression. Something certain. They released their lanterns together. The paper lights floated out onto the water, joining hundreds of others, drifting slowly downstream. Dae-hyun watched them go until he couldn't tell which lantern was his anymore. I need to tell you something, Nari said. They were standing apart from the crowds now, in a quiet spot where the trees blocked the noise of the festival. The lanterns glowed on the water behind them. The night was cold, but neither of them noticed. I was supposed to conclude my research tonight, Nari continued. I have sufficient data. I know what I am supposed to write. Human pair bonding is inefficient. It causes pain. It is biologically illogical and evolutionarily questionable. She paused. But I cannot write that, because I do not believe it anymore. End quote. Known. See. End quote. What do you believe? Dae-hyun asked. Nari stepped closer. Her skin glowed softly, colors rippling across her face like aurora. I believe that humans are the most remarkable species in the galaxy. Not despite your emotions, but because of them. You choose to feel even when it hurts. You love even when you lose. You hope even when there is no logical reason to hope. And somehow, against all probability, that makes you stronger. She reached out and took his hand. Her skin was cool, but her grip was firm. I did not mean to become part of your world, she said. I was supposed to observe, to remain objective, but somewhere between the coffee maker lessons, and the terrible dramas, and the night market and today, I stopped observing. I started feeling, Nari. I understand now why humans choose emotional pain, she continued, her voice trembling slightly. Because the alternative is worse. Never experiencing this feeling. Never knowing what it means to care about someone more than yourself. Never. She paused, struggling with the words. Never loving someone. Dae-hyun's throat tightened. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I am saying that my thesis is ruined, Nari said. And for the first time, she smiled. A real, human smile. I am saying that I do not wish to return to Valencia. I am saying that this feeling I have, this illogical and inefficient attachment, is what humans call love. And I am experiencing it. With you. Dae-hyun closed the distance between them. For someone who studies human relationships, you're really bad at reading the room. I've been in love with you since you took notes on my coffee-making technique. Nari blinked. That was 37 days ago. Why did you not inform me? Because I'm an idiot, and because I thought I was just data to you. You were never just data, Nari said softly. You were always more. I simply did not have the words for it. And now? Now, I have the words. She looked up at him. Her dark eyes no longer empty like space, but full and warm and alive. I love you, Dae-hyun. I love your coffee rituals and your terrible jokes and your kindness. I love the way you explain human things without making me feel foolish. I love that you never treated me like a specimen. You treated me like a person. Dae-hyun kissed her. It was awkward and gentle and perfect. Her lips were cool against his, but they warmed quickly. Her silver hair moved around them both, reaching toward him like it was trying to hold on. When they broke apart, Nari was glowing. Her entire skin shimmered with soft blue light, brighter than he had ever seen. What does that mean? He asked. It means my bioluminescence is reacting to strong positive emotion, she said. Then she smiled again. It means I am very happy. They stood together by the river, watching the lanterns float into the distance. Dae-hyun held her hand, and she held his, and neither of them let go. I will need to revise my thesis completely, Nari said eventually. New title: Why Humans Are Correct About Love. A Former Skeptic's Journey. I will require additional research time. At least another year. Possibly several years. She paused. Perhaps a lifetime. Dae-hyun laughed. I think I can help with that. 6 months later, Nari presented her revised thesis to a room full of skeptical Valesian academics through a holo-conference. She argued that human emotions were not weaknesses, but strengths. That love, friendship, and connection were evolutionary advantages, not biological failures. That the galaxy had much to learn from a species that chose to feel, chose to hope, chose to love, even when it cost them everything. The academics were not convinced. They called her conclusions unscientific. They questioned her methodology. They suggested she had gone native. Nari did not care. She ended the conference, closed her datapad, and walked into the kitchen where Dae-hyun was making coffee. She watched him pour 2 cups, add exactly the right amount of sugar to hers, and hand her the mug with a smile. How did it go? He asked. They think I am irrational, Nari said. Contaminated by human emotion. Unfit for objective research. And what do you think? She took a sip of her coffee. It was perfect, as always. I think they are correct. I am contaminated by human emotion. I am irrational. I am in love. She looked up at him, her dark eyes bright. And I would not change any of it. Dae-hyun kissed her forehead. That's the most human thing you've ever said. I know, Nari replied. I learned from the best. Outside the window, Seoul stretched out beneath the morning sky. Somewhere in the distance, other humans were falling in love, making coffee, arguing about dramas, holding hands at festivals, living messy, emotional, illogical lives. Choosing connection over isolation. Choosing love over safety. Choosing each other, again and again, despite everything. Nari had spent months trying to understand why. Now she finally knew. It was the only choice that mattered.